Good morning, Ethan. It's me, the Artisan MC, on my drive to work. Like, share, subscribe, support the stream if you feel so inclined, and I will try to kick some stuff in your ear for the next 30 minutes. Should have got up earlier, but I'm getting old. I'm getting a lot more sleep. I'm having a harder time getting up in the morning. How much sleep did I get last night? Damn, I've been consistently getting about 6 to 7 hours of sleep, and I still go to sleep late. Crazy. Imagine what I'd do if I went to sleep earlier. Like a full 8 hours worth of sleep. Couldn't contain myself. All right, so keep this quick. So I had a thought yesterday driving home from work, and I was listening to a video, and I was getting brought up on the news that Starfleet Academy had been canceled. Right? I don't find that damn shocking. I would have been shocked if we found out season 3 was greenlit and the studio was all excited about it. But I'm not shocked that it was canceled. It should have been canceled. Like most, I believe it probably shouldn't even been made, because that was some of the dumbest people in space I have seen in a while. And I don't know if it was intentionally or unintentionally stupid. What's up, Malika? Good morning to you too. Starfleet Academy was bad, man. It was a bad show. It was more fun to watch that show just to see how many cars were going to derail on this train wreck than it was to watch it and try to take it seriously as Star Trek, because it was none of that. It was none of that. There were some interesting ideas thrown in there, but they were not written worth a damn. Worth a damn. Everything else was played up more so than the actual interesting ideas. Like, you can point out very easily Jaden, right? Now, there was 2 parts to his story. The one part that they wanted to focus on, which was the cross-dressing Klingon. The other part, which was actually interesting, which was the pacifist Dr. Klingon. That was the more interesting part of the story to me. And that was the exact thing that did not focus on at all. He did very little doctor work. Sam did more doctoring than he did. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It just became a convenient way to get him out of the scene because he can't act. Now, something I heard yesterday while listening to another content creator's video, this panel was talking, they were reading an article about, I think it was on Dateline, and they were reading an article about Paramount announcing that Starfleet Academy is canceled. The 2nd season is going to come out, and that'll be it. There will be no more. And then there was a letter from Kurtzman that they were reading. And I was listening to the letter and found it really interesting that something that came up in the letter was about Kurtzman mentioning Gene Roddenberry being a bomber in like World War I, World War II. I'm like, oh, I didn't actually know that. That makes it a little bit more interesting for me to go back and do more research on Gene Roddenberry. But it also sparked a thought in my head about some of these great creators who have made some of these franchises that exist today. Shit, even and the question was, should modern writers go off to war? I'm really curious about that. Should modern writers go off to war? Now, on the hero's journey, we've talked about it many a times that these modern writers cannot write. They can't. And when they do write, it's mostly about sex and their genitalia. And a lot of internal conflicts about not knowing who the hell they are. But why is that? Most people will point to and say it's because they're really liberal. Maybe. That's a slam dunk. I've always held to is because they have no real life experience beyond having sex. That's it. They have nothing else to draw upon. Because what have they done their whole life? They're not fulfilling that sometime need in humanity that happens where there is a conflict and you either enlist or join the military in your respective country and go off to defend or protect your country's way of life. They don't do that nowadays. They hate the military. They dislike fathers. They dislike masculinity. They dislike tradition. All the things that they rail against and tear down in their shows. But here's the interesting part. A lot of these franchises that they tear down were made by people who actually did go off to war, who actually did put their nuts up and understand the fighting against a greater evil or injustice. To name a few, Gene Roddenberry, Stan Lee, and George R. Tolkien. These are all people who went to the military, who actually saw some war, some warfare. Were in the military around different ethnicities, in different places, in different countries, fighting battles, and clearly understood the difference between performative diversity and actual diversity. They understood that because they dealt with it. It wasn't a theoretical or intellectual exercise carried out on a campus. It was actually in their face. Now, all of these men that I named have made great works. All of them have made great works that have lasted decades until this modern era. Where in this modern era, the stewards of these franchises, these characters, these stories, have set about to deconstruct all of that shit. So when I sit there and think about what is lacking from modern writers, that's one of the things I can point to. The creators of these franchises understood respect, decorum, all of that stuff. But the modern writers don't. What the modern writers have in place of that is activism. That's their social cause their greater evil that they posse up and join behind and join up and wear the uniform of, the colored hair and, piercings and all the rest of that shit. That's what they sign up and enlist into. They don't enlist into actual military service. They enlist in the liberal service of social activism. Now, I am not against social activism. I still do not believe being out in the streets and disrupting other people's lives actually move the needle in that way. I really still don't. I just don't. But then again, I didn't grow up in the fucking 50s and 60s, did I? I grew up in the era of actual riots and shit. And not riots because people was just trying to get some shit and got their bandanas and everything else all over their face. No. Riots that spun out of what actually was going on. And actually being upset about an actual cause affecting you, not some shit in some other country. Aside from the news. Like is in here talking about Jack Kirby. Yeah. Most of those early Marvel writers and artists were military. They just were. That's why they can write stories about Captain America and stuff like that and have you believing in who Captain America was. He didn't have to get up to the 2000s and actually be killed or drop the mantle or we need the Winter Soldier or anything like that. No, because Captain America was ideals. The best of you putting forth those ideals. So to look at it in that context, it makes me wonder. Millennial, late Gen X, modern writers, maybe that's what they fucking missing. They missing some military service. They missing some world seasoning, some world rounding of actually being out in the world and doing things like maybe being off in the war, maybe actually having some damn children. Doing some things out in the real world outside of the bubble where you actually have real interactions with people and you learn how to be involved with other people. Now, I'm sure it doesn't make me popular on YouTube, but I don't give a dang how you have sex with anybody. I really don't. I don't care whatsoever. It doesn't make me shocked. It doesn't make me cringe. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. I'm that generation who had to grow up with this first. It's not that big of a deal to me. I think you're finding too much big of a party for it. It's not special. It's not. You can say it's different, but look, I was different for a while too, just because I was a geek. It all comes around, it all becomes normalized. Get here and still do what you need to be doing. It's still your job. So what? So what? Good for you. So to say that, I do not see sexual diversity as being that big of an issue to where it needs to be installed in every TV show. And that's what you think is there to write about. I don't think bold-faced sledgehammer politics need to be inserted in every show, especially not science fiction. If you can't be creative enough to tell that story or say what you want to say in a creative way. There are political shows and news networks for me to go to get that full frontal political message. There is. That's what they're there for. You have streaming services, you have cable channels. It's more than enough other channels to put all that political messaging on. The problem is that the people who would never sign up for military service, who will always use the specter of a draft when there's actually some war going on to get people to their side, are the main ones that use media to draft and enlist your children in the fight against that shit, or against the fight against you. The main ones. They understand a little bit how propaganda works because they use it every day, all day. What do you think the point is of throwing all the sexual diversity on the screen in every show? To soften the consciousness so you think there was never another way. No, there was. It's fine. Whatever you do now is fine. Look, it's up to you. You're an adult. Knock yourself out, man. But the way you proselytize it is to try to make it seem like everybody is this way. And it's not okay if you're not. And if you say anything opposite of that, you need to have some consequences happen to you. Why? Because you remember when it wasn't a big deal? Funny. What you find is this is the reason why these people on these shows cannot write compelling characters. Why you have a show called Starfleet Academy, and it just breaks down to looking like an older CW show. No military decorum, no military hierarchy, none of the stuff that would make you think that Star Trek is the bastion of science fiction fleet combat. And going to the academy was not a higher level of schooling and rigor that you would have to deal with. No, it was diversity college. It was community college on a spaceship. They weren't grappling with any big issues. Most of the people there were mere idiots. They got all sort of mental and emotional imbalances that would not make them fit for command anyway. They wouldn't be. And the one that's ahead and in command is the one that looks like the most unfit for leadership ever. I'm serious. I can remember when Star Trek Voyager came out and people was low-key bitching about Kate Mulgrew playing Captain Janeway because of the feminism shit. Captain Janeway ended up being a hell of a decent captain. Next to Nala Akti, holy shit. She couldn't be her first officer on the bridge. She couldn't be her helmsman because she don't know how to sit in her goddamn seat and do her fucking job. Or at least comb her hair. They made her chancellor and can switch off to being captain of a starship every once. Man, please, Starfleet has fallen. The burn is still happening. I guess all the, the class of A1s got burned up in the burn, and all that's left is these Nifnons. What up, Dead Set? Yeah, tell them something about Janeway. I watched Voyager. I didn't mind Janeway. I didn't like Kate Mulgrew as an actor sometimes because before that, only other thing I had really seen her in was Remo Williams. But watching her in some other stuff, she was a decent ass actor, right? But that was more of a blow for striking a blow for a competent feminine captain, the first female captain in the crew, then Nalake, Chancellor, she shouldn't be running a school. She should not be captaining no damn ship. Hell no. Man, the standards have fallen. Fallen. But the fact that somebody put this forward shows you their mindset and their understanding of what I was having a problem with in the show. There is no military decorum on that show. And in Star Trek, I expect some science. Yeah, I expect some science, which they couldn't write that competently either. But I also expect some military decorum. None of that was there. None of it. And why? Well, the writer would never go into the military, would she? She would just talk shit about the military, the government, and her country. That would be her primary focus outside of sexuality. Well, what did you get in the show? Sexuality, politics, no science, very little military, outside of understanding that it happens on a ship and they can fight. No life experience. There's a reason that for my retirement job, I thought about writing. In retirement, not as a young person, retirement. It's also the same reason I don't believe in psychology. You should be past an age limit to be a psychiatrist or a therapist. The reason being, you have no life experience. What the hell are you helping people with if you have never experienced it and probably never would? What advice do you have to give? Just what's in a book? Just what you observed? No, you need to go get some seasoning. You need some seasoning in the world before you start dispensing advice on how to live in the world to grown people who are actually doing that. That makes no sense. Look, I told you a couple of days ago that even my kids can give me gems of wisdom. Yeah, but they ain't telling me how to live my goddamn life. You know why? Because I was living my life when I was raising them and they were still sucking around. They don't know shit about it yet. And only one of them knows anything about that. So no, you have 30-year-old, damn near up to 40 now, grown-ass children who have no life experience with any one of those serious hallmarks in life. Any of them. Yeah, they went through college, but you know what their college years were? Exactly what you see on the screen. Maybe going to class, fucking around a lot, drinking, throwing up, doing kid shit. You know, year 1 and 2. The same stuff you could have did at a community college. No seriousness, no rigor, no real science. These are all classes they didn't even pay attention to. They didn't like them because it has confines. It has some rules you might have to follow. I don't want to do all that shit. I just need this because it's required. And then you get out to write about somebody who does this, you can't do it. You cannot do it because you have no experience with it. Yeah, UFO extended high school. That's why I say it was community college. You know, the place that people who weren't serious about their education actually had to go to at the last minute. I know, I went to community college. Why? Because I was thinking it was be cheaper on my single mama for me to go to community college than to try to go to Stanford, where I wanted to go, or Cal Berkeley. I wasn't getting a lot of tutelage in that department on how to get into that college situation. That wasn't it. I was getting plenty of tutelage to get out the house and get a job and pay some bills. Plenty of that. Little of the let's go to these colleges, let's look at these colleges, let's sign up for these grants and all the rest of this shit. No, that was something that school was supposed to do. That wasn't a family, endeavor. 1 second. Morning. Have a good day. You too. So that was the question. Should modern writers have military service? Should modern writers actually have been in the military? Because think of it this way. We have a generation of kids pretty much raised by people who were only raised by the educational system and whatever liberal teacher they had in school. So, crap on my nose. The person who, let's just say they came from some middle American town, went through their whole life being, separated from people, different ethnicities. Maybe there was 1 or 2 in their city, right? Maybe a black one, maybe a Latino one, something, right? They went through their whole 12 years of schooling. They go off to college. That's when they actually move away from home, maybe. They get to go to some other country, or not some other country, some other state, and go to school. And maybe, just maybe, they end up going to a school that wasn't homogeneously just what they were, right? Let's just say, what's up, underrated? Now they get some experience with a little bit more experience with some different ethnicities. They go through their college years, get out, they get their degree in liberal studies or whatever the fuck it was, right? Get out and get a job. They want to move to LA, right? Because they want to write. They want to work in films and television and stuff like that. So now they're in LA at 25, damn near 30. They want to write. Maybe they want to become a teacher, whatever the fuck. This person is now in charge of shaping the next generation. Based on what? Only what they've been told in school? They have no life experience really to season any of the rest of that with. Perfect example. This is like being in a math class and you tell the the teacher is giving you the assignment or the stuff that you're supposed to be working on in class, the problem, and you tell the teacher that the problem is wrong from the book. And they don't believe you because they can't figure out the goddamn problem themselves. So now you got to argue with the teacher in class about the book being wrong. Why? You might have had some higher level math. Maybe your parents was mathematicians and had you doing different shit. Now you got to argue with the teacher. Maybe you were homeschooled. So your math level goes a lot higher than the teacher sitting in there. Well, this is just the lesson plan, so this is what I got to read. You have no life experience to balance that shit out, and not enough of it. But now you're in charge of shaping the next generation. In essence, that is the blind leading the blind. You get that, right? So that's just my question. It's just something that came to me yesterday. So y'all kick it around and think about it yourselves. And you got an answer for it, drop it in the comment section or show up to a hero's journey on Sunday and we can talk about it again. Because I'm sure my mind will still be chewing on this come Sunday. So with that, I got to get in here. I will see you guys next time. Peace.